Hi everyone, hope you all are good. We are here for grade 9 math. You can find all the lessons on aplusstudents.com. You have to log in there using your email address and password as provided by the administrator. Then you have to select math from the subject tab. Scroll down to grade 9 and click on view all lessons. There you can find a list of the chapters. We're going to start with the chapter radical expressions, and the lessons we're going to cover today are simplify radical expressions, simplify radical expressions involving fractions, add and subtract radical expressions, and simplify and multiply radical expressions, right? So please make sure you have your notebook and pencil so that you can note down the important examples and definitions as well. Let's just start with the lesson. Here I am on grade 9 math. The chapter we're working on is radical expressions. Let's just start with the first lesson, that is simplify radical expression. Radical means this is known as the radical, right? So expressions that includes the square root sign are the radical expressions, right? Simplify. Assume b is greater or equal to 0. So how do you simplify? Let's just factorize 12. Prime factorization. That would be 2 times 2 times 3. And then you have b cube, right? You can write b cube as b square and b. These two have squares, right? So you can write them as 2 square root b square square root 3b, because you can cancel 2 and square root 2 and square root 2 and square root are opposite to each other, right? B and square root 3b. The correct option is 2b square root 3b, right? Let's just start with the test questions. Okay, simplify. Assume u and v are greater than or equal to 0, right? You have to factorize 126. Okay, so let's just factorize 126. You have to make the prime factors, right? So let's just factorize. Okay, 126, right? Hold on. 126 divided by 2. Okay, you have 2 times 3 times 3 times 7, right? These are the factors, and then you have u10 and v10, right? So you can write 3 square. U10 and V10 you can write as U5 and U5, right? You can write U5 square, and same you can write V5 square, and then you are left with 7 times 2, right? So that would be, you can write them as 3 square, U5 square square root, V5 square square root, and 7 times 2, right? 2 square root cancel, 2 square root cancel, 2 square root cancel. You are left with 3 u5 v5 and 7 times 2 makes 14, that is 3u v5 and square root 14 is the correct option. That number 2 is the correct option, that is 3u u5 v5 and square root 14. Got it? Option number 2 is the correct option. Okay, simplify. Assume y and z are greater than or equal to 0, right? So you have to prime factor, you need to prime factors of 7, right? How do we prime factors of, you already have 2 outside, you have 147 y square and z square, right? So let's just factor prime, make the prime factors of that are 7 times 7 times 3 y square and z square, right? So you can write 2 square root 7 square y square z square, and here you have 3, right? You can write as 2 7 square root y square root z square root, and you can write 3. 2 and z by square root cancel, 2 square root cancel, 2 square root cancel, you are left with 2 7y z and square root 3. You can multiply them, 2 times 7 makes 14 yz and square root 3. Option number 2 is the correct option. Got it? The correct option 114 yz square root 3 is the correct option. Got it? Okay, the next one is simplify 3 square root 20b7. So which is the correct option? You can solve the question on your notebook and pencil. Just write down the correct option in the chat box. That is, which is the correct option? That is option number 1, 6b cube and square root 5b. Option number 1 is the correct option, right? That is 6b cube square root 5b. Option number 1 is the correct option. Got it? Simplify 3 square root 20 m5. So which is the correct option? The correct option is yes, that is 6m square and square root 5m. Option 1 is the correct option, right? Basically, you need to time factor the number that is inside the um, radical sign, right? Then you have to factor out them, right? So that is 6m square times 6m. 6m square times square root 5m is the correct option, right? Okay, you lesson by yourself today. Let me just move on to next lesson. And the next lesson is simplify radical expressions involving fractions. Just start with the lesson. Okay, let's just start with the test questions. They are already solved. You can have a look later today. Okay, the first one is square root 10 over 9. So how do we solve? Basically, that is a fraction 10 over 9, right? So you can write them as what's wrong with you can write it as okay square root 10 over 9, right? So you this is equal to square root 10 divided by square root 9. That means the radical is for both numerator and denominator, right? Now let's just make their prime factors. Square root 10 can be written as 2 times 5 and square root 9 can be written as 3 times 3, right? So you can write them as 2 times 5 makes 10 because you cannot further remove the radical, and that would be 3 square, and radicals and 2 and square root cancel out each other, so you are left with square root 10 over 3, right? Basically, you need to cancel out the square root. You need to make their squares and cancel out their square root. So the correct option is square root 10 divided by 3. That is option number 2 is the correct option. Got it? The next one is square root 25 divided by 4. So let's just solve this one, right? That is square root 25 over 4. So you can write it as square root 25 divided by square root 4, and you can write 25 as 5 times 5, and you can write 4 as 2 times 2, right? So that would be 5 square and that would be 2 square. 2 square and square root cancel out, square and square root cancel out, you are left with 5 over 2. So the correct option is 5 over 2. Got it? The correct option is 5 over 2. Option number 2 is the correct option, right? The next one is simplify square root 9 over 25. So which is the correct option? That is 3 over 5, right? Option number 2 is the correct option. Very good. That is the second one, 3 by 5. Because you can factor 9 as 3 times 3 and 25 as 5 times 5. So you are left with 3 over 5. Okay, the next one is simplify square root 10 over 9. So which is the correct option? Which is the correct option? Yes, that is square root 10 divided by 3. Option number 1 is the correct option. That is square root 10 over 3. Okay, the next one is square root 9 over 4. So which is the correct option? Which is the correct option? Square root 9 over 4, the correct option is. But you're not given with the correct option here, right? Because you can factor out 9 as 3 times 3 and you can factor out 4 as 2 times 2. So the correct option must be 3 over 2, right? But you are not given with the correct option. That is 3 over 2 it is. What's wrong with the question? It must be 3 by 2, right? Okay, you can complete the lesson by yourself later today. Let me just move on to next lesson. And the next lesson is add and subtract radical expressions. So now we're going to see how do we add and subtract when we're given with the radical expressions, right? Let's just start with the first example, that is negative 8 square root 3 and plus square root 3. So you have negative 8 square root 3 and plus square root 3, right? So you can see here both of the expressions have square root 3. You can take square root 3 common outside, right? You are left with negative 8. Here you have 1, right? Plus 1, negative 8 plus 1. So just solve negative 8 plus 1 is negative 7. You already have square root 3, so that would be negative 7 square root 3. Basically, you can work with negative 3 as we work with the variables. So that negative 3 is with both the numbers. So you can just take common outside and that would be negative 8 plus 1, that is negative 7 square root 3. Got it? Let's just start with the test questions. Okay, the first one is 4 square root 3 plus 5 square root 3. So how do we solve? Okay, so you have 4 square root 3 plus 5 square root 3, right? So they both have square root 3 common. You can take outside square root 3 and you're left with 4 plus 5. So 4 plus 5 equals, yes, that is 9 square root 3. The correct option is 9 square root 3. Got it? The correct option is option number 1, that is 9 square root 3, right? Okay, the next one is subtract 3 square root 2 minus 5 square root 2, which is the correct option. The correct option is yes, that is negative 2 square root 2. Option number 2 is the correct option. Very good. The next one is add negative 8 square root 3 plus 2 square root 3, which is the correct option. The correct option is yes, that's the second one, negative 6 square root 3. The correct option is the second one. The next one is 5 square root 5 minus 4 square root 5. So, which is the correct option? The correct option is yes, that's the option number 1. Square root 5 is the correct option because 5 minus 4 is just 1. So, that is square root 5. Add negative 8 square root 2 plus 6 square root 2. So, which is the correct option? Yes, that's negative 2 square root 2. Option number 2 is the correct option. The next one is subtract negative 4 square root 5 minus 3 square root 5, which is the correct option. The correct option is yes, that's the second one. Negative 7 square root 5 is the correct option. Got it? The next one is negative 8 square root 3 plus square root 3, which is the correct option. Yes, that is negative 7 square root 3. Option number 2 is the correct option, right? Okay, you can complete the lesson by yourself later today. Let me just move on to next lesson, and the next lesson is multiply radical expressions, right? Let's just start with the test questions. Okay, that is square root 2 square, right? We know that square and radical squares are square and square roots are opposite to each other, so 2 and square root cancel out each other, right? This 2 and square root cancel out each other, you are left with just 2 because they are opposite to each other. Got it? So the correct option is 2. The correct option is 2. Okay, multiply square root 3 and square root 15. So how do you multiply? You can just write them down in the same square root because they both have square root, so you can write them as like this, right? Now just prime make the prime factors of 15. It would be 3 times 5, right? You can write it as 3 square times 5. So you can then write them as 3 square times square root 5. So 2 and square root cancel out. You are left with 3 square root 5. The correct option is option number 2, that is 3 square root 5. Option number 2 is the correct option, right? Okay, just wait. I don't know what's wrong with this IPvo. Hold on. Let me see how can I fix, because I think I need to restart my system. I need to restart my system. Hold on.